3:17 a.m. I know because I'd been staring at that damn digital clock for the past 47 minutes, listening to the house settle around me like old bones. The kitchen table felt cold under my elbows, and the half-empty bottle of bourbon wasn't helping the knot in my stomach anymore. That's when I heard her car pull into the driveway. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Pamela's heels clicked across the hardwood like gunshots in the silence. She didn't even try to be quiet anymore. Why would she? We both knew the game was over. She walked into the kitchen still wearing that black dress, the one she'd claimed was for a work dinner. Her lipstick was gone, her hair messed up in that particular way that told a story I didn't want to read. But what really got me was the look on her face. She was smirking. "Jack," she said my name like it tasted bitter. "You're up late." "So are you." I kept my voice level, though every muscle in my body wanted to explode. "How was your meeting with the Henderson account?" Her smirk widened. "There is no Henderson account, Jack. There never was." I'd known, of course. Had known for months. But hearing her say it out loud felt like getting punched in the chest by someone wearing brass knuckles. "I see." I took a sip of bourbon, let it burn. "So where were you?" She kicked off her heels and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The confidence radiating off her was nauseating. "Does it matter? You'll forgive me anyway. You always do." "Will I?" "Oh, Jack." She laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. "You're so predictable. Tomorrow you'll bring me flowers and ask what you did wrong. Next week you'll suggest counseling. Next month you'll buy me something expensive and pretend this never happened." I stood up slowly, my joints creaking like the old Victorian house around us. At 38, I felt ancient. "What if I don't?" Her eyes glittered with something cruel. "Then I'll make your life hell. I'll take half of everything you've worked for. I'll tell everyone in this pathetic little town exactly what kind of man you really are. Cold, distant, boring." She stepped closer, and I could smell another man's cologne on her skin. "But here's the thing, Jack. I've decided I'm done pretending. From now on, I decide when and with whom. You can either accept it, or you can get out of my way." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. She expected me to crumble, to beg, to promise I'd change, be better, try harder. Instead, I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" The confidence in her voice wavered just a fraction. I showed her the screen. "Checking the timestamp on these photos." Her face went white. On my phone were pictures I'd taken from her laptop 3 days ago. Pictures of her with Eric Sloan from her office. Pictures that would make a sailor blush. "You went through my computer?" "Your computer?" I laughed, and it came out darker than I intended. "The one I bought you for Christmas, the one on our shared internet plan, the one you were too careless to password protect?" She lunged for the phone, but I pulled it back. "There's more, Pam. Text messages, hotel receipts. That little video you sent him last Tuesday while I was at work." "You son of a—" "Careful." I set the phone down gently. "We're about to discuss terms." "Terms?" She was shaking now, but trying to hide it behind anger. "You can't prove anything. Those could be fake." I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were printed copies of everything. Bank statements showing charges to restaurants I'd never been to. Credit card receipts from lingerie stores. Screenshots of text conversations that would make a porn star blush. Ray helped me put this together. Ray Morrison owned the garage where I worked, but more importantly, he'd been through his own messy divorce 5 years ago. He knew every trick in the book. "Turns out your boyfriend Eric has a wife too. Linda, right? Sweet lady. Works at the bank downtown." Pamela's hands were trembling now. "What do you want?" "I want you to pack your things and get out of my house." "Your house? I live here too. I have rights." "You have the right to find somewhere else to sleep tonight." I walked to the front door and turned the deadbolt. "I changed the locks this afternoon. Your key won't work anymore." "You can't do this." "I can, and I am." I grabbed 2 garbage bags from under the sink and tossed them at her feet. "You've got 10 minutes to pack whatever you can carry. Everything else we'll sort out through lawyers." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Jack, please. We can work this out. I made a mistake." Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk. What you did was make a choice. Every single day for the past 6 months, you chose to lie to me, to humiliate me, to throw away 15 years of marriage for some middle management sleazeball with a sports car. Tears started running down her cheeks, but I was past caring. "I love you, Jack. I know I screwed up, but I love you." "No, Pam. You love what I provide. the house, the stability, the safety net. But you don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have been sending naked pictures to Eric while I was downstairs making you dinner. She tried one more time, stepping close and putting her hand on my chest. Please, give me another chance. I removed her hand gently but firmly. I gave you 15 years of chances. You used them all up. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. She packed frantically, crying and cursing and begging by turns. I sat at the kitchen table and watched, feeling nothing but a strange, cold satisfaction. When she was done, she stood in the doorway with her garbage bags, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. You'll regret this, Jack. I'll make sure you regret this. Maybe. I took another sip of bourbon, but I doubt it. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I sat in the quiet house for a long time after that, watching the sun come up through the kitchen window. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Not because I was actually sick, but because I had research to do. Ray understood when I explained the situation. He'd been through his own version of hell with his ex-wife. You need anything, Jack, you call me, he'd said. And I mean anything. These things can get ugly fast. I spent the morning going through every piece of evidence I'd collected. Bank statements, credit card bills, phone records. The picture they painted was uglier than I'd imagined. The affair with Eric had been going on for 8 months, not 6. But worse than that, there had been others. A bartender named Mike from downtown. A personal trainer called Dave. Even her boss's son. A college kid barely old enough to drink. My wife hadn't just been cheating. She'd been running a one-woman escort service, using our marriage as cover. Around noon, Mrs. Dugan knocked on my door. Eleanor Dugan was 73 years old, lived alone in the house next door, and knew everyone's business within a 5-block radius. She had the sharpest eyes and the sharpest tongue in the neighborhood. Jack, dear, I heard the commotion last night. She handed me a casserole dish and a flash drive. Thought you might be hungry, and thought you might want to see what my new security camera picked up last week. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop while the casserole heated up. What I saw made my stomach turn. Clear as day, there was Pamela in Mrs. Dugan's backyard, pressed up against our fence with Eric Sloane's hands all over her. The timestamp showed 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I'd been at work, thinking my wife was home sick with a migraine. How long have you known? I asked Mrs. Dugan. She sipped her tea primly. Months, dear, but it wasn't my place to say anything. Marriage is sacred, even when one party doesn't think so. Why tell me now? Because last night she threatened you. I heard her through the window. No one threatens a good man in my neighborhood. Mrs. Dugan had been married for 47 years before her husband died. She understood loyalty in a way my generation seemed to have forgotten. What are you going to do, Jack? I looked at the video again. Eric's face was clearly visible. So was his license plate when he left an hour later. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with. That afternoon, I drove to Pamela's office. Pinnacle Tech Solutions occupied a glass building downtown, all modern angles and expensive furniture. Eric worked in sales on the 3rd floor. I found him in the parking lot getting into his red BMW. The same car I'd seen in Mrs. Dugan's video. Eric. He turned around, and his face went pale when he saw me. Jack, hey man, how's it going? It's going great, actually. I walked over to his car, admiring the paint job. Nice ride. Must have cost you a fortune. Yeah, well, business is good. He was nervous, fidgeting with his keys. Listen, I should probably get going. Funny thing about business. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video. Sometimes it mixes with pleasure. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his Adam's apple bobbing. Jack, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been screwing my wife in my neighbor's backyard. But maybe I'm misunderstanding something. It's not what you think, I laughed. Eric, I've got 8 months of evidence. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos. I know exactly what I think. He tried to step around me, but I blocked his path. Where are you going, Eric? Got another man's wife to disappoint. Get out of my way, Jack. Or what? You'll call security? Go ahead. I'd love to explain to your boss why one of his employees is using company time to destroy marriages. Eric's face flushed red. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I pulled out my keys and dragged them along the side of his BMW, leaving a long, deep scratch in the paint. Oops. You psycho. That's going to cost thousands to fix. Sue me. I scratched the other side for good measure. Oh wait, you can't. Because then you'd have to explain why I was angry enough to key your car, and that would involve admitting you've been sleeping with my wife. Security guards were walking toward us now, but I didn't care. I'd made my point. Stay away from Pamela, Eric. Stay away from my house, my neighborhood, and my life. Because if I see you again, it won't just be your paint job that gets damaged. I walked away, feeling better than I had in months. Behind me, Eric was screaming about assault and vandalism, but the security guards looked more confused than concerned. After all, who was the real victim here? Word traveled fast in a town like ours. By the time I got to Murphy's bar that evening, half the neighborhood already knew about my confrontation with Eric. The other half was about to find out. Murphy's was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and the bartender, Barb, was the unofficial keeper of all secrets. She was a tough woman in her 50s who'd survived 2 bad marriages and didn't have patience for cheaters. Jack Forrester. She slid a beer across the bar without being asked. Heard you had an interesting day. News travels fast. Faster when it involves someone getting what they deserve. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Your wife's been coming in here for months, you know. Always with different men, always acting like she was single. That hurt more than I expected. You never said anything. Wasn't my place. But I'll tell you this. Nobody here respected her for it. A married woman acting like that. It's shameful. Ray walked in and took the stool next to me. How you holding up, buddy? Better than expected. I took a long pull of beer. What did you find out? Ray had spent the day doing his own investigation. He had contacts all over town, mechanics, contractors, guys who saw everything and remembered more. Eric Sloane's got a reputation, Ray said. This isn't the first marriage he's helped destroy. Word is, he targets wives who are bored or unhappy, makes them feel special, then moves on when things get complicated. What about Pamela? She's been bragging about her open marriage to anyone who'll listen. Says you're too weak to stop her. The beer turned sour in my mouth. Is that what people think? Barb snorted. People think she's a fool. You're a good man, Jack. You work hard, you're honest, you treat people right. She's the one who looks bad in this. Speaking of looking bad, Ray said, guess who just walked in? I turned around to see Pamela entering the bar with her friend Miriam. They took a table in the corner, but Pamela kept glancing over at me. She looked like she'd been crying. Ignore her, Barb advised. She's trying to get a reaction. No, but I had a better idea. I walked over to their table, beer in hand. Ladies, I nodded politely. Miriam, how's your husband Tom doing? Still working those long hours at the bank? Miriam shifted uncomfortably. He's fine, Jack. Good to hear. Must be nice having a husband who actually comes home at night. Pamela's eyes flashed. Don't be an ass, Jack. An ass? I'm just making conversation. I sat down without being invited. Speaking of conversation, Pam, how's Eric doing? I ran into him today. I heard. Her voice was ice cold. You can't just destroy people's property because you're angry. Angry? I laughed loud enough for the whole bar to hear. I'm not angry, sweetheart. I'm relieved. 15 years of wondering why my wife was never interested in sex, and it turns out she was just saving it for other people. The bar had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now. Miriam tried to diffuse the situation. Jack, maybe we should... Should what? Pretend my wife wasn't sending nude photos to half the men in town? Pretend she wasn't using our marriage bed to audition for her next affair? Pamela stood up abruptly. You're drunk. I'm honest. There's a difference. I stood too, looking around the bar. Hey everyone, I want to make an announcement. My wife Pamela here has decided she wants an open marriage. So if any of you guys are interested, she's taking applications. Fair warning, though, she's got expensive tastes and a flexible schedule. Jack, stop. Pamela's voice was shaking. Stop what? Telling the truth? You wanted everyone to know how liberated you are. Well, congratulations. Now they know. I walked back to the bar, leaving her standing there with tears streaming down her face. Miriam hurried her out, but not before I heard Pamela whisper, He's going to pay for this. Let her try, Ray said when I sat back down. You've got enough dirt on her to bury her twice. Barb refilled my beer. That was harsh, Jack, but fair. Fair. That was all I wanted. After months of lies and humiliation, I just wanted things to be fair. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and phone calls. Pamela had hired an attorney, some hotshot from the city who specialized in protecting women's rights in divorce proceedings. Translation, he was going to try to take me for everything I was worth. But I had advantages Pamela didn't know about. Ray had helped me transfer ownership of the garage to a family trust months ago, back when I first suspected something was wrong. The house was in my name only. I'd bought it before we got married. And thanks to her careless spending on her affairs, I had a paper trail that would make any judge sick. More importantly, I had allies. Mrs. Dugan had been busy. Her network of neighborhood gossips had been collecting information about Pamela's activities for months. They had dates, times, license plate numbers. They'd seen her bringing men to our house when I was at work. They'd watched her sneak around like a teenager. It's not about being nosy, Mrs. Dugan explained over coffee. It's about protecting the neighborhood. When someone acts like that, it brings down property values. Barb at Murphy's had been collecting stories, too. Apparently, Pamela had been more careless than I'd realized. She'd been openly talking about her affairs, laughing about how stupid I was, making jokes about our marriage. She told everyone you were boring in bed, Barb said bluntly. Said you couldn't satisfy her if your life depended on it. That stung, but it also gave me ammunition. If she wanted to make our private life public, I could play that game too. The breaking point came on Friday night. I was working late at the garage when I heard glass breaking. Someone was trying to break into my office. I grabbed a wrench and crept toward the sound. Through the window, I could see a figure rummaging through my desk drawers. It was Eric. "Looking for something?" I flicked on the lights. Eric spun around, holding a crowbar. "Jack, I thought I saw someone breaking in." "With a crowbar? How thoughtful of you to investigate." I stepped closer, wrench in hand. "What are you really doing here, Eric?" His face was flushed, and he smelled like alcohol. "Pamela said you had photos, videos. She wants them back." "I bet she does." I kept moving forward. "Did she also tell you to trash my office?" "I wasn't trashing anything. I was looking for evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Proof that you're stalking her, harassing her. She says you've been following her, taking pictures." I laughed. "Eric, I have security cameras. They've been recording this whole conversation. So when the police ask why you broke into my business with a crowbar, what are you going to tell them?" The color drained from his face. "You're bluffing." I pointed to the corner where a small camera was mounted. The red light was blinking steadily. Eric dropped the crowbar and ran. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, Eric was long gone. Still, I had him on video, and that was enough to file charges. Breaking and entering, attempted theft, destruction of property. "Why would he do something so stupid?" Officer Martinez asked while reviewing the footage. "Because he's desperate," I said, "and desperate people make mistakes." The next morning, I had copies of the security footage delivered to Eric's office, his wife Linda, and Pamela's lawyer. I also sent copies to the local newspaper and posted them on social media. The caption read, "When you're having an affair with someone's wife and they catch you, the smart thing to do is apologize and move on. The stupid thing to do is break into their business with a crowbar. Guess which choice Eric Sloan made." Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times. Eric's phone was probably ringing off the hook, but I wasn't done yet, not even close. Sunday morning, I was having coffee on my front porch when 3 cars pulled up to the curb. Out stepped Pamela, Eric, Miriam, and 2 guys I didn't recognize. They looked angry and determined. This was the confrontation I'd been expecting. "Jack," Pamela marched up to my porch like she owned the place. "This has gone far enough." "Has it?" I didn't stand up, because from where I'm sitting, it feels like we're just getting started. Eric hung back by the cars, probably remembering our last encounter. The 2 strangers looked like they were trying to be intimidating, big guys with gym muscles and bad attitudes. "You can't keep harassing us," Pamela said. "The video, the social media posts, keying Eric's car, it's stalking." "Stalking?" I laughed. "Sweetheart, I caught your boyfriend breaking into my business. That's called evidence." One of the strangers stepped forward. "Maybe you need to learn some manners." I finally stood up, still holding my coffee mug. "And you are?" "I'm Dave." He was about my age, but bigger, with the kind of muscles that came from steroids rather than honest work. "Pam's friend." "Ah, Dave the personal trainer." I nodded. "Miriam's husband Tom is looking for you, by the way. Something about his wife coming home with your cologne on her clothes." Dave's face went red. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you've been sleeping with Miriam while her husband works double shifts to pay for her gym membership. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's an innocent explanation for why you were in the Riverside Motel with her last Tuesday afternoon." Miriam made a strangled sound. "Jack, you're lying." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo. "Ray took this when he was driving by. Nice and clear, don't you think?" The photo showed Dave and Miriam going into a motel room together. Their faces were clearly visible. "You son of a bitch," Dave snarled, stepping toward me. "I wouldn't." My voice was calm, but I was ready for him. Mrs. Dugan is watching from her window, and she's already called the police. You want to add assault to your list of problems? Dave looked around and saw Mrs. Dugan's curtains twitching. He stepped back. This is harassment, the second stranger said. I'm Todd, from Pam's office. We know what you're doing. Todd, I smiled. The guy who's been covering for Pamela when she takes her long lunches with Eric. Tell me, does your wife know you've been lying to help my wife cheat on me? Todd's confidence evaporated. I was just being a friend. A friend? You helped her book hotel rooms, Todd. You lied to her supervisor about where she was. You even drove her to meet Eric when her car was in the shop. I'd gotten all this information from Ray, who had a contact in Pamela's office building. How do you think your wife Sarah is going to feel when she finds out? You don't know Sarah, Todd said weakly. I know she works at the bank with Linda Sloan, Eric's wife. They've become quite friendly lately, bonding over their cheating husbands. This was a lie, but Todd didn't know that. Small world, isn't it? The group was falling apart. Dave was backing toward the cars, Miriam was crying, and Todd looked like he was going to be sick. This isn't over, Pamela said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is. I sat back down and picked up my coffee. It's been over since the night you told me you'd decide when and with whom. You made your choice, Pam. Now you get to live with the consequences. They left without another word, but I knew this was just the beginning. Desperate people don't give up easily. I was counting on it. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. Pamela and her friends had stopped their public confrontations, stopped calling, stopped trying to negotiate. In my experience, that meant they were planning something big. I was right. Ray called me at home on Thursday night. Jack, you need to get down to the garage, now. What's wrong? Just get down here and bring a camera. I drove through the empty streets, my mind racing. When I pulled up to the garage, I could see Ray's truck parked across the street. He was sitting in the cab, watching something. What's going on? I asked, sliding into the passenger seat. He pointed toward my office. Been here about 10 minutes, came in through the back window. Through the darkness, I could see a figure moving around inside my office with a flashlight. It was Eric, and he wasn't alone. Pamela was with him. What are they doing? Best I can tell, they're planting something. Maybe drugs, maybe stolen goods. Something to get you arrested. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. How long have you been watching? Long enough to get it all on video. Ray held up his phone. Every second of them breaking in, every second of whatever they're planting. We watched for another 5 minutes as they moved around my office. Finally, they slipped back out the way they'd come in. Now what? Ray asked. Now we spring the trap. The next morning, I called the police and reported a break-in. When Officer Martinez arrived, we found a bag of cocaine hidden in my desk drawer and a stolen laptop under my workbench. This is serious, Jack, Martinez said. These are felony charges. I know. That's why I want to show you something. I pulled out my phone and played Ray's video. It clearly showed Eric and Pamela breaking in and planting the evidence. Martinez watched the whole thing without saying a word. When it was over, he shook his head. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. They're on camera committing multiple felonies. What happens now? Now I arrest them for breaking and entering, planting evidence, possession of stolen property, and conspiracy. He paused. Jack, this video probably saved your life. If we'd found this stuff without it, you'd be looking at 10 years in prison. Within an hour, Eric and Pamela were in handcuffs. The whole thing was captured by the local news crew that just happened to be in the neighborhood. Funny how these things work out. But I still had one more surprise for them. The trial was a circus. Pamela's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of domestic abuse, driven to desperate measures by her controlling husband. Eric's lawyer claimed he was just trying to help a friend in need. It might have worked, except for one thing. I had evidence they didn't know about. For months, I'd been recording every conversation in our house, every phone call, every argument, every whispered confession. It was all legal. I owned the house, and I'd posted notices about security recording in every room. The recordings painted a very different picture than what their lawyers were claiming. There was Pamela laughing with Miriam about how easy it was to manipulate me. There was Eric bragging about his plan to get me arrested so he could swoop in and comfort Pamela. There were conversations about selling our house and running away together, but the most damning recording was from the night before they planted the evidence. Pamela and Eric in our kitchen planning the whole thing. Once Jack's in prison, I'll get everything in the divorce, Pamela said on the recording. The house, his business, his savings. We can start fresh somewhere else. What if he fights it? Eric asked. He can't fight it from a jail cell. And even if he gets out eventually, his reputation will be destroyed. No one will believe him over me. The jury heard every word. When the recording ended, the courtroom was dead silent. Pamela's face had gone white. Eric was staring at the floor. The verdict came back in less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. But that wasn't the jaw-dropping finale. That came later, at the sentencing hearing. I stood up to give my victim impact statement, and I pulled out one final piece of evidence, a USB drive. Your Honor, there's something else the court should know about the defendants. I'd spent weeks putting together a comprehensive dossier of their activities. Not just the affair, not just the evidence planting, but everything. Eric's history of targeting married women, Pamela's pattern of manipulation and lies, the other marriages they'd destroyed. This wasn't a crime of passion, I told the judge. It was a calculated scheme to destroy my life and steal everything I'd worked for. They're not victims, they're predators. The judge reviewed the evidence for several minutes. When he looked up, his expression was grim. Mr. Sloane, Mrs. Forrester, in 30 years on this bench, I've rarely seen such a callous disregard for the law and for human decency. You didn't just commit crimes, you tried to destroy an innocent man's life to cover up your own moral failures. Eric got 5 years in state prison. Pamela got 3 years, plus restitution for all the money she'd stolen from our joint accounts over the past year. But the real justice came after the trial. Eric's wife Linda divorced him and took everything. His job was gone, his reputation destroyed. He'd lost his house, his car, his future. Miriam's husband Tom found out about her affair with Dave and kicked her out. She was living in a studio apartment and working at a grocery store. Todd's wife Sarah left him when she discovered his role in covering up the affairs. He'd been demoted at work and was facing his own divorce proceedings. Dave, the personal trainer, lost his gym membership sales job when several of his married female clients' husbands found out what he'd been doing. Last I heard, he was working at a fast food restaurant. As for Pamela, she lost everything. Her job, her friends, her reputation, her freedom. When she got out of prison, she'd have nothing left but the memory of the night she told me she'd decide when and with whom. I kept the house, the business, and my self-respect. Mrs. Dugan brought me casseroles, Ray and I expanded the garage, and Barb at Murphy's always had a cold beer waiting when I stopped by. 6 months after the trial, I was working late in the garage when I found a letter that had been slipped under the door. It was from Pamela, written from her prison cell. Jack, it read, I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did to us. You were a good husband, and I threw it all away for nothing. I hope someday you can find someone who deserves you. I read it twice, then tossed it in the trash. She was right about one thing. I'd never forgive her. But forgiveness was overrated anyway. Justice, on the other hand, was priceless. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on my front porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood I'd fought to protect. Mrs. Dugan waved from her garden. A young couple walked by with their kids, holding hands and laughing. This was what marriage was supposed to look like, what loyalty was supposed to mean. Pamela had thought she could decide when and with whom, but in the end, I'd decided how her story ended, and it ended exactly the way it should have.